Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into one of the strangest landscapes of Victorian life. Not the glittering ballrooms or the stiff drawing rooms, but the long shadow of mourning. Imagine waking in a world where grief itself had rules so exacting that one misplaced colour, one mistimed smile, could ruin your reputation. You probably wouldn't survive it, not because of sorrow alone, but because of the weight of etiquette pressing down as heavily as the black crape itself. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And I'd love it if you'd leave a comment with where in the world you're listening from, and what time it is right now. I always picture these stories stretching quietly across different nights and mornings, linking us together. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake in a house that smells of wax and lilies. The air is cool, and the heavy curtains let in only a sliver of daylight. Somewhere downstairs a clock should be striking the hour, but it has been stopped, its hands pinned forever to the moment of death. A superstition whispers that if time continues to tick, the soul will wander. So silence reigns. Even the air feels muffled, thick, as though wrapped in cloth. Beside your bed lies a folded dress, all black. The fabric is dull, deliberately lifeless. The opposite of shine. When you lift it, the weight surprises you. The crepe is stiff, almost scratchy, refusing softness. You step into it, and already your shoulders bow under more than fabric. The garment isn't designed to flatter. It is designed to announce you are bereaved, and you must show it. Anna, your maid, enters without knocking. Her eyes lowered, she carries a bonnet with a long veil of black crepe, the strands so heavy they almost hum when she sets it down. She helps you button the dress from collar to hem, her fingers steady but hesitant. She knows the rules as well as you do. A widow must wear full mourning for a year and a day, 12 months and one before even a hint of colour is allowed. Less than that and whispers will follow. She is cold, unfeeling, improper. The veil slips over your face. The world behind it dims, edges blurred. It smells faintly of dust and dye, and when you breathe, the cloth warms against your lips. Looking through it feels like looking through fog. You see shapes, but not faces, as if the veil protects you from the world and the world from you. Downstairs, the drawing room is transformed. Mirrors are covered in dark fabric to stop the spirit from being trapped. The piano is closed, silent for the length of mourning. Even photographs have been turned face down on the mantel, as though eyes should not meet yours in this state. On the table, lilies droop, their sweetness turning sour, the scent almost cloying. Guests arrive already. Their boots creak softly against the floorboards. They enter with solemn nods, leaving calling cards edged in black. You receive them with gloved hands, the leather thin but separating skin from skin. Condolences are offered in voices carefully pitched, low, restrained without flourish. Each phrase is formal, as though grief itself is rehearsed. You murmur thanks, though your words feel brittle. Inside you wonder, are these condolences genuine, or another performance in the endless play of manners? A boy from the undertaker's shop delivers a small package, mourning jewellery. You open the case, and there, set into jet, lies a brooch that holds a coil of hair, his hair, twined and braided, sealed beneath glass. To wear it will be both comfort and burden. Memory pressed against your skin, and intimacy turned into ornament. Historians argue about how universal such tokens were. Some accounts describe them as rare luxuries. Others insist they were nearly compulsory among the middle classes. Letters hint that some women found them morbid, even grotesque, yet they wore them anyway, bound not by love but by duty. You lift the brooch and feel its cool weight in your palm. For a moment you press it to your chest, unsure if it comforts or chills. The day stretches ahead. You will not laugh. You will not sing. You will not attend dinners or concerts. To be seen in public too soon, or in colours too light, would mark you as heartless. Even joy itself has been outlawed by convention. You glance at the clock again, frozen at the hour of passing. Its silence presses against your ears. Outside, a carriage rolls past, wheels crunching over stones. The world continues, but here time has stopped. You lower your eyes, veil slipping closer to your lips, and breathe in the faint sweetness of lilies gone stale. Grief may be heavy, but etiquette is heavier still. The veil waits for you on the dressing table, a folded sheet of crepe darker than coal, heavier than any cloth you have ever worn on your face. Anna lifts it with both hands, as if it were fragile, though the fabric itself is coarse and stubborn. She shakes it gently, and the folds unfurl with a sound like stiff paper being torn. When she sets it across your head, the world dims. Through the weave of the cloth, daylight turns to smoke, edges blur, the furniture loses its shape, your own hands fade as though they belong to someone else. The veil presses close against your breath, carrying the faint odour of dye. Each inhalation leaves a damp warmth. Each exhalation clouds your vision further. It is not designed for comfort, nor even for practical modesty. It is designed to broadcast grief, loudly, publicly, unmistakably. In Victorian England, widows were expected to wear these mourning veils for the entirety of deep mourning 12 months and 1 day, to be seen barefaced, or with a veil too short, too sheer, too soon, was to invite whispers, sometimes open censure. Some women called it a widow's prison, a punishment draped across the skin. Anna steps back to examine you. Only the outline of your jaw is visible beneath the folds. Even your voice sounds different when you speak, muffled, distant, as though grief itself has been given a texture. When you try to lift the veil slightly to breathe, Anna's hands flutter nervously. "Best to leave it, miss," she murmurs. "They'll notice." And they will, neighbours, acquaintances, strangers in the street. Everyone polices grief. You walk toward the mirror. Its surface has been covered with a dark cloth, as every mirror in the house has been. The superstition is older than your veil. Mirrors could trap the soul of the dead, or worse, reflect their spirit back among the living. With glass hidden, you cannot see your own reflection. You rely instead on the sensation of cloth dragging against your cheek, brushing your lips, grazing your collar. Downstairs, your mother sits already veiled. She lifts her head, eyes invisible behind the gauze. For a moment you feel as though you are looking at a ghost. Two women in the same room, yet faceless, unreadable. Conversation under the veil becomes a strange performance. Words muffled, gestures clumsy, every small motion exaggerated. Historical records suggest that the black crepe industry itself became infamous in the 19th century. The fabric was dyed with harsh chemicals, and women who wore it for months often complained of rashes, coughs, and streaming eyes. Some letters even described it as a killer cloth, irritating the lungs with every breath. Not everyone agreed about its dangers. Merchants insisted it was harmless, but to wear mourning was to accept not only grief but physical suffering as proof of your devotion. You open the front door, and daylight presses against the veil. Outside, the street is quiet, neighbours lingering on doorsteps. Some bow their heads as you pass. Others study the length of your crepe, checking that it falls correctly, brushing the ground at the exact place etiquette demands. The air tastes of smoke and damp stone, but through the veil it feels filtered, dulled. You wonder if you will ever breathe freely again. Children playing in the alley pause and stare. To them, the sight of a woman moving behind a shroud is half terrifying, half fascinating. They whisper, and one girl mimics the drag of cloth across her own face, then giggles before being hushed. You walk on, each step measured, aware of eyes on you. The veil makes even simple movements difficult. When you step up into the carriage, the fabric catches under your foot. When you sit, it pulls like a heavy tide across your lap. Eating under it is nearly impossible, so you avoid food in public altogether. Drinking requires a delicate tilt, raising the glass beneath the gauze, hoping no one notices the awkward angle. Many widows wrote of fainting during church services, the heat trapped beneath the cloth unbearable. Yet to remove it, even for a moment, would seem indecent. At church, candles blur into halos through the gauze. Hymn books are hard to read, the notes swimming, letters smudging together. When you lower your head in prayer, the cloth brushes the open page, smearing faint traces of soot. You close your eyes instead, surrendering to the muffled dark. Even indoors, the veil governs you. To sew beneath it means pricking your fingers more often than the cloth. To read, you must hold pages dangerously close to your eyes. To speak, you raise your voice, but even then your words come out muffled, ghost-like. Servants lean in, straining to catch what you say. The veil does not merely conceal grief, it warps communication itself. The strange truth is that veils were not always universal. Some records hint that poorer women substituted shawls or scarves, unable to afford yards of crepe imported from specialized factories. Others describe widows who refused entirely, though such defiance came at the cost of gossip and social isolation. The veil became a test, not only of grief, but of resources, compliance and endurance. You hear the neighbours talking through the open window when they think you cannot hear. One voice says, "The cloth falls too short. She ought to let it sweep the street." Another adds, "Too new, likely bought on credit. They'll notice." Judgment is sharp, relentless. Grief has become public property, measured in inches of black cloth. At the end of the day, you return to the house. Your face damp, your throat sore from the dye and the heat. Anna helps lift the veil away, and for a moment you inhale air as though it were a blessing. But she does not fold it far. Tomorrow it must return, and tomorrow again for over a year. It will yellow with soot, stiffen with moisture, fray at the edges, but still it must remain. You set it carefully on the chair by your bed. In the dim lamplight it resembles not cloth, but shadow made solid. You lie down, eyes burning, skin tingling where the fabric brushed you all day. Even in sleep, the weight lingers. You dream not of faces, but of shapes hidden behind a curtain that never lifts. The house itself seems to mourn with you. Every surface has been altered since the moment of death. Every familiar corner wrapped in silence and shadow. You step slowly through the hallway, skirts whispering across floorboards that used to creak cheerfully under lighter days. Now the creaks sound hushed, guilty, as though the wood itself knows laughter is forbidden here. The first thing you notice is how much has been hidden. Every mirror in the house, whether in the entry, the drawing room, or the upstairs corridor, has been draped in dark cloth. Some are covered with heavy velvet, others with hastily pinned black shawls. A child once asked why, and the answer was spoken quickly, almost in a whisper. Mirrors can hold the soul. If the spirit of the dead glances back and sees itself, it may remain trapped forever. So the glass is blinded, the reflections erased. For weeks, sometimes months, no one in the house looks upon their own face. Next are the clocks. The tall case clock in the hall, the small carriage clock on the mantel, even the pocket watch your father kept by his bed, all have been stopped. Their hands rest motionless at the hour of death, as though time itself has been struck down. Guests notice immediately. Some say it shows respect, others insist it guards against bad luck. You hear contradictory explanations whispered in different rooms, but all agree a clock must not tick in a house of mourning. The silence becomes eerie. You find yourself listening for chimes that never come, waiting for time to move forward, but finding only stillness. Even the furniture has been subdued. Sofas and chairs wear dull covers, embroidered cloths pulled hastily over brighter fabrics. Lamps burn lower, their light muffled by shades wrapped in black crepe. The piano has been shut tight, keys sealed beneath its lid as though sound itself were dangerous. Once, in the middle of the night, you almost lifted the cover to press a single note, just to remind yourself that music still existed. But you stopped, hand trembling. It would have felt like betrayal. Lilies sit in tall vases on every available table, their fragrance heavy, almost suffocating. At first their presence seemed gentle, a token of kindness from friends, but as days pass the sweetness turns cloying, rotting at the edges. The petals curl brown, water in the vases grows cloudy, yet no one dares remove them. The scent of decay and perfume mingle, filling your lungs with reminders that both flowers and bodies wilt in time. When visitors enter the house, they too are swallowed by this silence. Voices lower, as if the walls demand it. Even footsteps soften, people unconsciously stepping lighter on the carpets. Children are hushed before crossing the threshold, their laughter strangled at the doorway. A house in mourning teaches its own etiquette without words. Historians note that such practices varied wildly. In some towns, every home would cover mirrors and stop clocks as soon as death occurred. In others, only wealthier households bothered, using the rituals as displays of propriety. Letters from the time show confusion. One cousin scolding another for leaving mirrors uncovered, another mocking the whole affair as superstition. Records contradict one another, but in your house at least, the rules are unyielding. Anna moves through the rooms with unusual care. She dusts the shrouded mirrors, polishes the stopped clocks, straightens the covers on chairs. She works around the silence, creating order without breaking it. You catch her once pausing at a veiled mirror, pressing her hand briefly against the cloth. Perhaps she longs to see her own reflection again, to reassure herself she is still there. She notices your gaze and withdraws quickly, muttering apologies though none are needed. Meals are strange in this atmosphere. The dining room feels smaller with curtains drawn tight, light reduced to a dim glow. Conversation is nearly absent. Plates clink, forks scrape softly, but laughter is absent, anecdotes unspoken. Even food itself is subdued. Plain broths, bread without adornment, meats boiled rather than roasted. The idea of indulgence seems offensive, so nourishment becomes perfunctory. You eat because you must, not because appetite stirs. Superstitions hang in the air, as heavily as the cloth on the mirrors. Some say you must cover portraits too, lest the eyes of painted ancestors tempt the dead to linger. Others insist windows should remain shut until burial, to stop the spirit escaping prematurely. You do not know which is true, which invented, which remembered wrongly. All you know is that the house breathes differently now, its lungs sealed by ritual. At night, the silence deepens further. Without clocks, you have no rhythm of hours. Without mirrors, no sense of your own face. The house becomes timeless, formless. You light a candle and walk the hall. Shadows leap across the veiled glass, making the draped mirrors look like tall, faceless sentinels standing watch. You pause before one, hand lifting toward the cloth, tempted to peel it back just an inch, but you withdraw, fearing what you might see or not see beneath. Quirky details persist. A neighbour leaves at your door a basket of mourning biscuits, hard little cakes stamped with crosses and edges painted black. They are to be handed out at the funeral, tokens for guests to carry away. You turn one over in your hand. Its surface oddly cheerful, despite the colour. It tastes dry, chalky, leaving dust on your tongue, and yet, in its very blandness, it fits. Food without joy suits a house without laughter. The most unsettling moment comes when you find yourself missing sound. The hush that once seemed respectful now feels oppressive. Even your own breathing grows too loud, too intrusive. You remember how, only a week ago, the hallway had been filled with your father's cough, the parlour with a cousin's laughter. Now even when voices whisper, the silence swallows them whole. A friend writes in her letter that in her house they never covered mirrors or stopped clocks. It is folly, she claims, to pretend the dead will escape through glass or wood. You read the words in dim lamplight, veil lifted briefly for your eyes alone, and you feel the clash of worlds. But here, in your family's house, tradition outweighs reason. The cloth remains, the clock stays still, and silence rules every room. You return to your chamber, and as Anna helps you loosen the veil, You glance once more toward the shrouded mirror. You cannot see yourself. Perhaps that is the point. In a house of mourning, you are not meant to be yourself. You are meant to be grief, shaped into human form. When you lie down, the absence of ticking clocks leaves the night bottomless. You wait for chimes that never come. The only sound is your own heart, heavy and uneven, marking a time no one else acknowledges. The morning after the funeral, the house stirs again, but it does not wake in any normal sense. Instead, it receives its visitors, one by one, each bound by the obligation to bring condolences. You sit in the drawing room, veil drawn low across your face, gloved hands folded on your lap, and wait for the bell. It rings often, each time the butler answers, and soon the door opens to admit another figure in muted clothing. Neighbours, distant cousins, business acquaintances of your father, they enter gravely, carrying small cards. The cards are placed on a silver tray and presented to you before the person even bows. Each rectangle of stiff paper is bordered with black, sometimes thick and bold, sometimes thin and delicate. The inked names seem less important than the edge of mourning printed around them, as though the design itself were speaking the condolence. You rise slightly, offer a gloved hand, and murmur words that feel rehearsed. Thank you. We are grateful for your kindness. The visitor answers with phrases just as polished. He was much esteemed. She will be remembered. No one lingers. 15 minutes is considered polite. Too short, and it is rude. Too long, and it is intrusive. Everyone knows the script. The ritual repeats again and again. Cards on the tray, murmured condolences, stiff nods, the shuffle of feet as each person withdraws. By the end of the morning, the tray is heaped with cards, a small mountain of names surrounded by black borders. You look at them and wonder how many of these people feel true grief. How many are simply proving themselves respectable by showing their faces for the proper length of time. A small plate of mourning biscuits sits on the sideboard, offered to guests as they depart. The biscuits are pale, stamped with black designs of urns or crosses, their edges brushed with soot-coloured sugar. Some visitors nibble politely, others slip them into pockets as tokens. You watch one woman hold hers between finger and thumb, as though it were something precious. Later, Anna tells you she found 3 crumbs in the hallway rug, trailed like bread for birds. Historians note that such biscuits became a small industry of their own. Bakers stamped them with funereal motifs, packaged them in black-papered boxes, and sold them by the dozen. Records suggest that some families considered them necessary tokens, others mocked them as trivial. Letters contradict one another, one widow finding comfort in distributing them, another writing with disdain, calling them cakes of duty. The weight of performance hangs heavy on you. Each visitor looks not only at your face, blurred through the veil, but at your posture, your words, the very tilt of your head. If your voice sounds too strong, too composed, people will mutter that you lack feeling. If it falters, if your hands tremble, they may whisper that you are weak, undisciplined. Grief here is not private. It is measured, judged, confirmed by others. Between callers, you sit in silence. The house smells of lilies and damp wool, faint smoke from the hearth mixing with perfume clinging to the visitor's clothes. The silence presses so deeply that when the bell rings again you flinch, heart racing, as though sound itself has become an intruder. A curious moment comes when an elderly aunt leans close, her veil brushing against yours. Her voice lowers to a conspiratorial whisper. "You must not laugh," she warns. "Not in public, not even a smile, for the year and the day." She taps the edge of your glove for emphasis. They watch. Always they watch. She squeezes your hand once before drawing away, as though sealing the warning with touch. You glance toward the mantel where the cards accumulate. Black edges upon black edges, a pattern repeating endlessly. They feel less like messages of sympathy and more like tally marks. Each one a note in a ledger, proof of your grief recorded, proof of their duty fulfilled. In the afternoon, more distant acquaintances arrive. Men who once dealt with your father in business. They stand stiffly, their hats held low. They speak of honour, of legacy, of reliability. Their words are smooth, but their eyes flick quickly over your clothing, your veil, your composure. Even in condolence there is judgment. One gentleman lingers too long. His words stray from formality, his voice dropping almost to softness. You must be lonely, but you will endure. The phrase hovers uncomfortably. Anna enters the room at that moment to adjust the fire, and the man takes his leave. You feel heat beneath your veil, a reminder that vulnerability itself can attract notice you did not invite. By evening, you are exhausted, not from talk, for you spoke little, but from performance. Each minute required control of your posture, your breath, the very timbre of your voice. Grief would have been easier if it were silent, private. Instead, it is a play acted daily, with visitors as audience. Later, when Anna helps remove the veil, your skin is damp, your eyes sore. She lays the veil flat, smooths it with care, and sets it on the chair for tomorrow. You glance at the tray of cards, still overflowing. For a moment you imagine the cards speaking in chorus, each voice repeating the same phrases until the words lose meaning. You think of your father's clock, hands frozen at the hour of death. If it ticked, it would tell you the day is passing. That time carries you away from this weight, but the clock is silent, and the house remains suspended in ritual. Even the air feels pinned, like an insect in a case. When at last you lie down, the echo of voices follows you. Polite condolences swirl in your ears, phrases repeated until they become hollow. He was much esteemed. She will be remembered. You close your eyes, and behind the darkness you still see the black edges of cards, endless, multiplying, pressing closer until they blot out even your dreams. Morning light seeps through the curtains, pale and diluted, as though even the sun itself respects the rules of mourning. Anna enters quietly, carrying a small velvet box. She sets it on the table with unusual solemnity. When she opens it, you see a brooch nestled inside, its dark gleam unmistakable. At first glance, it appears to be an ordinary jet, polished to a deep black shine, but then your eyes focus on the centerpiece, a coil of hair, plaited and woven into a perfect knot, sealed beneath glass. It is his hair, cut after death, preserved as a token, transformed into jewelry. Anna lifts the brooch delicately and pins it at your collar. The weight is small, yet it pulls downward, heavy with implication. Against your skin through the cloth, you feel not comfort but strangeness. Intimacy turned into ornament, memory turned into display. For Victorians, this was normal, even expected. To wear the hair of the departed was a visible sign of devotion. To refuse was to risk being judged cold or neglectful. You stare at it in the mirror, though the glass is still veiled in dark cloth. Your reflection is hidden, but you know the brooch gleams against your black dress, a pale glimmer in a sea of shadow. You think of the hands that cut those strands, the scissors closing, the body lying still. For a moment you cannot breathe. Mourning jewellery was not rare. It became an industry, flourishing in shops along Regent Street and in catalogues delivered to the provinces. Some pieces held woven braids, others elaborate curls, even entire miniature portraits painted with powdered hair. A widow might wear a ring set with a lock, a bracelet woven from strands, or earrings dangling with tiny hairwork patterns. Letters from the time reveal mixed feelings. Some found comfort in carrying a tangible part of their loved one. Others wrote of revulsion, wearing the relic only because etiquette required it. You recall hearing of a neighbour who kept a whole wreath made from the hair of her family, framed and hung in the parlour. Visitors stood before it, as though before a sacred relic. Not everyone admired such displays. Some muttered that it bordered on grotesque, a shrine better hidden than flaunted. Accounts contradict one another, but the pressure remained. Mourning was never private. It was public performance, and jewellery was part of the costume. The brooch scratches faintly against your collarbone as you move. When you lower your head to sip tea, it presses into your skin, sharp, insistent. You wonder if this discomfort is the point, that devotion must sting, that grief must pierce, even in ornament. You imagine people glancing at it during visits, nodding approvingly at the evidence of fidelity pinned so close to your heart. Later in the day, more tokens arrive. A ring arrives by post, its black enamel inset with a narrow band of hair. A cousin brings earrings, each containing a swirl sealed beneath tiny glass ovals. You accept them all, placing them in the velvet-lined drawer of your dressing table. The collection grows, each piece a fragment of memory transformed into fashion. Anna whispers as she helps you try on the ring. "It is beautiful, miss." Her voice carries the hesitance of someone who knows beauty, and strangeness can exist in the same object. She slides it onto your finger, where it fits snugly, almost too tightly, as though the hair itself resists confinement. You flex your hand and the ring glints dully in the candlelight. Visitors notice at once. When you greet a neighbour in the drawing room, her eyes drop quickly to the brooch. She murmurs approval. How fitting, how proper. She does not need to say more. The jewellery has spoken on your behalf, declaring your grief louder than words. At supper, you catch yourself staring at the brooch again, hypnotized by the braided strands beneath glass. They shimmer slightly, catching the lamplight, as though still alive. You wonder if this illusion is comforting or cruel. Food passes without taste, conversation muted, but the weight of the brooch remains constant. Historians debate how widespread such jewellery truly was. Surviving examples fill museum cases suggesting popularity, yet some accounts insist it was more common among the middle class than the poor. Records hint at disagreements, one minister calling it vanity disguised as grief, another praising it as holy remembrance. Not everyone agreed, but the expectation lingered strongly enough that few dared refuse. At night you remove the brooch carefully, setting it on the table. The pin leaves a small dent in the fabric of your dress, a mark of its presence. You touch your collarbone, still sore from the weight and the scratch. Anna folds the dress away and lays the brooch beside your gloves. In the quiet it glimmers faintly, watching like an unblinking eye. You dream uneasily. In the dream, the hair uncoils, spilling across your chest, winding around your throat. You wake with a start, the candle guttering low. For a moment you almost reach to tear the brooch apart, to scatter the strands, but propriety holds your hand. In the morning you will pin it back on. Grief in this world is never invisible. It is worn, paraded, fastened in metal and glass. You sleep knowing that tomorrow once again you will walk with his hair pressed against your skin, your sorrow woven into ornament for all to see. The day of the funeral dawns grey and damp, as though the weather itself has rehearsed the proper mood. You rise early, the veil once again lowered across your face, the mourning brooch pinned coldly at your throat. Outside, a hush hangs over the street, broken only by the distant clop of hooves. The undertaker has arrived. When you step through the door, the air hits you with a mingling of smells, wet stone, coal smoke, and the faint oil rubbed into the leather harnesses of the horses. 4 great black horses stand waiting, each draped in a heavy cloth that nearly sweeps the ground. On their heads, tall black plumes nod and sway, feathers so long they look like flames of darkness. The sight makes your breath catch. To modern eyes it might seem grotesque, but to your neighbours it is necessary spectacle. The grandeur of death is measured not only in tears but in how richly one parades the body through the streets. The coffin is lifted into the hearse, a polished carriage of black wood and glass. Curtains inside are trimmed with velvet, gleaming silver fittings on the outside. As the men settle it into place, the creak of wood and the dull thump of weight reverberate through the quiet street. People gather at windows and doorways, their faces pale in the morning light. You take your place behind the hearse, mother beside you, veil brushing against your lips with each breath. The procession begins. The horses step forward, hooves striking the cobblestones in a slow, solemn rhythm. The plumes on their heads sway like pendulums marking grief. The wheels of the carriage grind heavily, echoing down the lane. Neighbours fall in behind, some clutching their own small mourning cards, others simply drawn by duty or curiosity. Children tug at their mothers' sleeves, whispering questions. They are hushed at once. Mourning is no place for curiosity, though curiosity fills the air. The undertaker's assistants walk alongside, their coats buttoned to the chin, gloves black, top hats draped with crape. Even their faces seem rehearsed, impassive, grave, untouched by weather or time. Some say they train themselves to this expression, practicing until grief becomes a profession. Historians describe this era as one where death itself became a kind of theatre. Carriages gleaming, plumes swaying, mourners walking in ranks. It was not enough to bury. One must display. Yet not everyone agreed. Letters survive from critics who saw these processions as vanity, as competition between families to outdo one another in sorrow. Still, in your street today, no one mocks. They watch silently, measuring the dignity of your grief by the feathers, the hearse, the length of the procession. You walk carefully, skirts heavy with damp, boots slipping slightly on stones slick with drizzle. The veil blurs your vision, so you focus on the ground. One step, then another. Breath comes shallow. The corset presses, the veil suffocates, yet you continue because stopping would be unthinkable. At corners, more people join the line. Some carry handkerchiefs embroidered with black thread. Others wear narrow bands of crepe tied to arms or hats. One man lifts his hat as the hearse passes, holding it low against his chest. You notice how every gesture is codified, how long he holds it when he replaces it. Even mourning is timed. A strange detail unsettles you. The professional mourners, two women you do not know, walk at the edge of the crowd, their sobs sharp, theatrical, their bodies swaying as though stricken by grief. They are hired, paid to wail, to make the family's loss appear deeper. Their cries pierce the silence, a rhythm against the horses' hooves. At first you flinch at their noise, but others nod approvingly, as though such sound proves devotion. You wonder if the neighbours believe the women are kin, or if everyone knows the truth. The air is damp with mist, and droplets cling to your veil. They bead on the black fabric like tiny pearls, but instead of shining they dull the light further. You blink hard to see, eyes stinging from the mix of soot and drizzle. The procession turns toward the church. Its spire looms grey against the pale sky, bells tolling slowly, each note stretched until it seems to hang in the mist. The hearse halts before the gate. The coffin is lifted once more, and the pallbearers grunt softly under its weight. They carry it through the arched doorway into the nave, where candles glow against the gloom. Inside, the air is warmer, heavy with wax and incense. You follow, steps echoing on the stone floor. The coffin is set at the front, draped with black cloth, wreaths of lilies and roses placed atop. The scent fills your lungs, sweet and suffocating. The service begins. The vicar's voice is measured, practiced, words rolling in cadences you have heard before at other funerals. You hardly hear meaning, only rhythm. Around you, heads bow, hands fold, sighs stir the air. Through the veil, faces blur to anonymous ovals, indistinct, as though the whole congregation has been swallowed into one great figure of grief. You stand for hymns, but your voice does not rise. The veil dampens sound, and your breath falters. Candles become halos, letters in the hymn book blur. You close it, pressing gloved fingers against the stiff leather. Music continues around you, low and steady, as if sung by ghosts. At the close, biscuits are passed among mourners, funeral biscuits, stamped with black crosses, wrapped in paper, edged with mourning borders. Some eat them at once, the dry crumbs catching in throats. Others tuck them into pockets as keepsakes. You take one, holding it in your hand, its sugar gritty beneath the paper. You nibble once, and the taste is chalky, leaving a faint bitterness on your tongue. Still, to refuse would be improper. The coffin is carried out again, the procession forming once more. Outside, the mist has thickened. You follow as the coffin is borne toward the graveyard behind the church. Gravel crunches, mud clings to hems, the air grows colder. At the open grave, earth gapes like a wound. The coffin lowers slowly, ropes groaning, thuds of wood against damp soil echoing. The vicar casts a handful of earth, and others follow. You hesitate, then release a small clod. It breaks apart on impact, scattering into dust. For a moment the world seems to hold its breath. Then shovels move, earth falling in steady rhythm. Hollow thumps muffled by wet ground. As the grave fills, people murmur polite phrases again, nodding, pressing gloved hands briefly to yours. Condolences repeat like echoes of the morning visits. He will be remembered. She is much esteemed. The words blur, indistinguishable, rehearsed. Finally, the procession dissolves. The hearse departs empty, the plumes drooping, feathers slick with rain. Neighbours drift back to their homes, boots splattered with mud. The hired mourners vanish quickly, voices silenced as though they were never real. You stand a moment longer, veil heavy, gloves damp. The earth at your feet smells raw, metallic. The coffin is gone from sight, hidden beneath the soil. The grave is not yet marked, only a mound of turned earth. You lower your eyes, whisper a prayer you cannot fully form, and turn away. The walk home is slower. Without the hearse to guide you, the path feels empty. Rain thickens, drops pattering against your veil, soaking the fabric until it clings cold against your lips. By the time you reach the house, your shoulders ache, your boots are sodden, and the brooch at your throat feels like a stone pressing you down. Inside, warmth greets you, but it is a hollow warmth. The lilies still wait, the mirrors still veiled, the clock still silent. Anna helps you remove the drenched veil, spreading it near the fire to dry. You watch droplets hiss and vanish on the iron grate. Your skin is red where fabric pressed too tightly. Your lungs sore from shallow breaths. Night falls with a stillness that feels deeper than before. The house holds its silence. The day's performance complete. Yet in your mind the procession repeats. The horses' hooves, the swaying plumes, the voices of women who cried for hire. You wonder if grief belongs to you at all, or if it has become a costume worn for others. When you close your eyes, you see black feathers bending in mist, nodding endlessly, as though even in dreams the horses continue their march. The churchyard lingers in your senses long after you return home. The damp smell of turned earth seems to cling to your gloves, though Anna swears she has brushed them clean. When you close your eyes, you still hear the hollow thud of soil falling onto wood, the muffled finality of it. Yet mourning does not end at the grave. In Victorian England, burial was only the beginning. The rituals stretch onward, looping into weeks, months, years. Tonight, the house breathes those rules back into you. You sit by the fire, veil removed at last, and study the plate left for you on the side table. Not supper, but biscuits again. Those dry, chalky funeral cakes. Anna explains they were given out to all present, wrapped in small paper envelopes edged with black. Each bore your family name, a kind of edible announcement: here lies the deceased, mourned by this house. Some people save them uneaten for years, tucking them into drawers, a bizarre relic of sorrow. You bite into one experimentally. The texture is gritty, the sweetness faint, the taste of ashes more than sugar. It lodges in your throat, forcing you to sip lukewarm tea to swallow. The ritual is not about pleasure, it is about evidence, proof that you have accepted your role, even in taste. In the following days, the graveyard itself becomes a site of ritual. You walk there again, skirts trailing mud, boots heavy. The air is sharp, smelling of iron and damp grass. The mound is raw still, soil heaped untidily. You notice the flowers already wilting, wreaths collapsing, petals browning at the edges. Visitors nod to you as they pass, each glance another measure of your devotion. You stand silently, hands folded, veil lowered. How long should one remain by the grave? 15 minutes? 30? Etiquette does not write numbers, yet the neighbours are always watching, silently scoring. Beside the mound, you notice something peculiar. Biscuits again, but left crumbled at the grave's edge. Children must have dropped them, or perhaps adults placed them intentionally as offerings. The birds peck at them cautiously, scattering crumbs across the soil. You wonder whether these tokens of food are meant for the dead, or only for the living to witness and whisper about later. The graveyard itself is crowded. Stone crosses tilt, iron railings enclose family plots, moss creeps across names. Between them, mourners weave in a strange ballet, all in black, all moving slowly, some clutching prayer books, others leaning heavily on arms. You recognize a few faces, though not all. One woman sobs openly, clutching her veil. Another stands rigid, expression unreadable. Yet both are judged equally by onlookers. Too much grief, and you are weak; too little, and you are cold. Historians remark on this paradox often. The Victorians demanded mourning be visible, extravagant even, yet also restrained. Tears were allowed, but not hysteria. Silence was dignified, but too much composure seemed inhuman. Letters contradict one another, some praising widows who bore sorrow with stiff upper lips, others admiring those who wept without shame. The truth is that there was no safe balance, only the constant risk of reproach. At the grave, the vicar murmurs prayers again. You kneel briefly, hands trembling against damp stone. The earth smells raw, metallic, a scent you cannot wash away no matter how much rosewater Anna rubs onto your gloves later. You rise, skirts dragging through mud, veil streaked with droplets of drizzle. By the time you return home, your hem is soaked, and Anna clucks her tongue as she lays it out to dry. "It will stain, miss," she warns. Yet to avoid the grave would be worse than stained fabric. Absence speaks louder than presence in this world. Inside the house, rules continue to govern every gesture. The piano remains locked, covered with a length of black cloth. The curtains stay drawn, muting daylight into a grey haze. When you try to open them once for air, your mother frowns. "Not yet," she says simply. The sound of children playing outside feels almost obscene when it slips through the gap. You close the curtains quickly, ashamed for wanting light. Letters arrive daily, folded in black-edged envelopes. Each envelope is another reminder, news of deaths elsewhere, condolences repeated, invitations withdrawn until mourning ends. Even correspondence wears mourning clothes. You stack the envelopes in a box, their black borders like little coffins for words. When you read them aloud, your voice feels borrowed, as though you are speaking someone else's life. Quirky customs persist. In some regions, mourners sent not only biscuits, but also special gloves or scarves embroidered with black thread. One parcel arrives for you, a pair of gloves, kid leather dyed black, edges stitched with a pattern of vines. You slip them on, and they fit snugly, almost too tight. The leather squeaks faintly as you clench your hand. Another package brings a printed card with a poem about death, sentimental verses mass-produced for sale. You set it aside, the words already fading from memory, though etiquette demands you keep it. The grave itself continues to change. Each time you visit, more earth has settled, the mound sinking gradually. Soon the stone will be ordered, perhaps with an elaborate carving, perhaps plain. Families compete even here, vying for the grandest monuments. Some tombs rise like miniature chapels, their doors locked against intruders. Others are humble, leaning slabs half sunk in moss. You wonder what stone will mark this grave, and how it will speak of your family's devotion. Evenings stretch in silence. You sit with your mother in the drawing room, embroidery untouched, hands idle in your lap. The fire crackles, but its warmth feels hollow. Conversation drifts no further than polite murmurs. Did you write the thank you letters? Yes, tomorrow they will go. Beyond that, nothing. The air thickens with unsaid words, with the rustle of veils and the faint hiss of burning coal. Anna brings tea. Her steps quiet. She glances at you once, eyes filled with sympathy quickly hidden. Servants, too, must obey the silence, though their lives continue outside. You imagine them in the kitchen, whispering, laughing when out of earshot. For a moment you envy them their freedom from rules. Then remember even they wear black bands around their sleeves, mourning visible even in the scullery. At night you dream again of biscuits. In the dream they fall endlessly from trays, scattering across graves, crunching beneath boots. Birds gather, pecking furiously, their wings beating against veils, scattering black feathers into the air. You wake breathless, the taste of chalk still on your tongue. The days blur. Each one repeats. Visits to the grave, silent meals, letters in black envelopes, rules pressing on every breath. Yet within each repetition, you feel the strangeness deepen. Grief is no longer a private ache. It has become ritual, spectacle, even industry. Even crumbs on the soil carry meaning. Even the cut of gloves signals propriety. You are not only mourning, you are performing endlessly, for the eyes of others and the whispers that follow. When you finally lie down, the silence of the house folds around you like another veil. No clock ticks, no music plays, no laughter dares break through, only your own breath, shallow, cautious, fills the dark, and you know that tomorrow will bring the same rituals again. Biscuits, veils, graves, and the heavy gaze of a society that insists grief must never fade too quickly. The day after the funeral, when the last carriage has rolled away and the plumes have wilted in damp air, you expect relief. Instead, you find only a heavier stillness. Death has been buried, but mourning remains alive, pulsing in every gesture of the household. The rooms are darker, the curtains still drawn, the air thick with wax and stale lilies. Nothing has lifted. In truth, it has only begun. The return from burial was not an end, but the opening of another chapter. Mourning etiquette insists the household itself must reflect the loss. You glance around. Every picture frame wears a strip of black crepe tied across a corner. The clocks are still frozen, hands unmoving, reminding you constantly of the hour of death. Even the family dog wears a narrow ribbon of black tied clumsily around its neck. It scratches at it sometimes, whining softly, but no one dares remove it. You sit in the parlour, veil lowered once more, though there are no visitors this morning. The fabric scratches your lips as you breathe. Beside you, Anna polishes silver spoons and trays used during the funeral meal. She works silently, each scrape of the cloth loud in the hush. When she finishes, she sets the tray aside, the gleam dulled by the dim light. You both wait, though neither of you could say for what. At midday, your mother insists on another visit to the grave. It is expected, she murmurs, voice brittle, so you wrap your shawl, take Anna's arm, and walk again through damp streets. Neighbours glance from windows, noting your diligence. To neglect the grave so soon after burial would stir gossip. Already, rules coil around your ankles like chains. The cemetery greets you with silence broken by crows. The grave itself has sunk slightly, soil damp and uneven. The flowers placed 2 days ago have begun to rot. Petals collapsed, stems slimy in the wet earth. The sight unsettles you, mourning demands beauty, yet decay cannot be hidden. You kneel anyway, gloves pressing into cold mud. Your veil droops forward, brushing damp petals. You whisper a prayer, though your words vanish into mist. Stranger still, some of the furniture has been covered, chairs draped with black cloth, lamps muffled by scarves. Even dishes in the dining room, china patterned with bright flowers, have been replaced temporarily with plain white. Chairs has been scrubbed away from every surface. The house feels less like a home than a shrine. A woman nearby leans down to leave a curious token, not flowers, but a small envelope sealed in black wax. She places it carefully on the mound and bows her head. Later, when she leaves, you notice the envelope is damp, ink bleeding through. You wonder if such letters are meant for the dead to read, or only for the living to witness. As you rise, you catch whispers from two passing mourners. "She comes faithfully," one says, nodding toward you. The other responds, "Yes, but does she stay long enough?" Judgment never rests. Even your silence by the grave is measured, weighed against invisible standards. On the walk back, you pass a mourning warehouse, a shop entirely devoted to the trappings of grief. Its windows display veils, gloves, bands of crepe, even stationery bordered in black. A mannequin stands draped in heavy mourning dress, head bowed as if alive. Inside, you glimpse shelves stacked with black-edged envelopes, mourning jewellery, and ready-made wreaths. The sight chills you. Death has become business, and grief is sold by the yard. Yet customers bustle within, choosing fabrics, measuring lengths. You wonder if they feel sorrow, or only relief at finding the proper tools to display it. Historical records describe such houses in detail. Visitors wrote of rooms transformed into chambers of twilight, where every object bore the mark of loss. Some accounts praise the solemnity, others call it oppressive. Letters hint at contradictions. One widow comforted by the orderliness of it all, another confessing she longed to throw open the curtains and breathe light again. You recognize both truths. As evening falls, the house becomes dimmer still. Candles flicker behind dark shades, their flames small and cautious. You attempt to stitch, thread trembling in your gloved fingers, but the work is poor. The veil obscures your sight, the black thread blending into fabric until you cannot see where the needle goes. You prick your finger, a bead of blood staining the cloth. You hide it quickly. Ashamed, sorrow must not appear messy, even in private. At home, the day resumes its hush. Anna serves tea in cups painted with discreet black rims, specially purchased for the mourning months. She sets a plate of dry biscuits beside you, their edges brushed with soot-coloured sugar. You take one bite and swallow, though your throat rebels. The act is not about flavour, it is about participation. Before bed, you sit at your desk and attempt to write thank you notes. The stationery is bordered in black, ink smudging slightly where your hand trembles. You write the same phrases over and over. "We are grateful for your kindness. Your thoughtfulness is deeply felt." The words blur into one another, meaningless yet required. Each note is a bead on the rosary of propriety. You seal them with black wax, the scent sharp in your nose, and stack them neatly. Another task complete. When night comes, you walk through the hall once more. The draped mirrors stand like mute witnesses, reflecting nothing. The covered chairs appear as hunched figures, cloaked in darkness. You pause before one, feeling an urge to rip the fabric away, to see colour again, but you do not. To break the ritual would feel like tearing at the very body of grief. Later, Anna brings a tray with a small loaf of bread. She explains it was delivered by a neighbour. Funeral bread. Another token. Its crust is marked with blackened flour, a sombre touch added before baking. You tear off a piece, chew and feel only grit between your teeth. Bread meant to sustain, altered into a symbol of sorrow. Even nourishment is colonized by grief. When you extinguish the candle, the house swallows you in darkness. No clocks tick, no mirrors shine, no laughter dares echo. The silence is nearly a presence, pressing against your skin. You lie down, and the veil still lingers in your mind, its scratch on your lips, its dimming of the world. You drift toward uneasy sleep, knowing tomorrow will demand the same rituals again, visits, tokens, covered rooms, and the endless performance of sorrow. The weeks lengthen, and with them the rules grow heavier rather than lighter. You expected mourning to ease after the funeral, but in Victorian England the funeral was only a threshold. Once crossed, it commits you to a year and a day of unrelenting ritual. They call it deep mourning, and its demands shape your life more sternly than any priest or law could. Each morning, Anna brings out the same garments. The heavy black dress, the long veil, the jet brooch at your collar. Your wardrobe is a prison. Every ribbon, every lace, every button is bound by regulation. Bright fabrics have been locked away, packed into cedar chests. Even jewelry of gold or silver is forbidden, unless it contains the token of death, hairwork, jet, onyx. You are not merely dressed, you are armoured in grief. When you step into the street, passers-by measure you with their eyes, the length of your veil, the cut of your sleeves, the dullness of your fabric, all are scrutinised. An acquaintance once whispered, "She lifted her veil too soon," and within a week the remark had spread through 3 neighbourhoods. Grief is public property. The community feels entitled to weigh it, like merchants inspecting cloth. You learn the prohibitions by heart. You cannot attend the theatre. You cannot play cards or join music lessons. Invitations to dinners or dances no longer arrive. Friends know you cannot accept. Laughter itself is policed. To smile openly in public even once would risk whispers that you are unfeeling. You find yourself practicing restraint even when alone. Face stiff, lips pressed. The muscles of joy weaken from disuse. Historians describe deep mourning as the strictest of social codes. Manuals printed whole lists of forbidden activities, regulating not only clothing but behaviour. Yet the exact duration varied by class. The wealthy often stretched the rituals longer, using conspicuous sorrow as proof of dignity. Poorer families sometimes could not afford months of black, and letters from the time show them judged for it. One woman wrote bitterly that she had only a single dark dress and washed it nightly, yet still neighbours sneered that her devotion was insufficient. Within your own house, the rules extend even to sound. The piano remains closed, a black cloth draped over its keys. Music is not permitted in deep mourning. When Anna hums softly while polishing silver, your mother scolds her. The silence is total. Nights stretch long without song, without laughter, without even the ticking of clocks. Meals, too, are altered. No feasts, no sweets, no lavish roasts. Supper becomes a plate of plain boiled meat, bread, and weak tea. The food tastes of nothing, yet propriety insists this is correct. To indulge would seem indecent. Even appetite is curtailed. You chew slowly, lips barely parting, mindful of every gesture. Eating itself becomes another performance of grief. Stranger customs creep in. When you send letters, they must be written on paper edged in black. When you call upon others, your visiting cards carry the same border. Postmen deliver stacks of these mourning notes across the city. A whole network of grief travelling through the mail. One record suggests entire streets seemed to drip with black ink when epidemics struck. You picture envelopes fluttering like dark birds from house to house. Anna brings one such envelope to you today. Inside, a poem printed on black-bordered paper. Its verses are sentimental, describing angels and eternal rest. It was likely purchased, mass-produced, yet etiquette demands you keep it, so you tuck it into the drawer with the others. Already the drawer is half full, a graveyard of paper condolences. Not everyone obeys these rules. Some women chafe at them, daring to shorten the length of mourning or lighten their fabrics earlier than prescribed. Letters hint at arguments. A widow accused of coldness for smiling at a cousin's wedding. Another shunned for attending a lecture too soon. Still, the rules bind more strongly than rebellion. You think of defiance sometimes, opening the curtains wide, letting in light. But the weight of expectation presses you down. Your body suffers as much as your spirit. The veil makes your breathing shallow. The corset squeezes your ribs, and the heavy cloth of your skirts drags with each step. After weeks, your skin itches constantly from the dye of the fabrics. Your eyes burn from peering through gauze. Some women faint in church, overcome by the heat and the weight. Yet still they rise again to wear the same attire the next day. Devotion is measured by endurance. One afternoon, you overhear two gentlemen passing outside your gate. Her mourning is correct. One says approvingly, "She has not erred once." The words should comfort, but instead they strike like chains. Your grief is no longer your own. It has become a performance for strangers' approval. In the evenings, letters arrive with more black borders, more tokens of sympathy. Among them, one curious parcel, a handkerchief embroidered with your initials in black silk. A neighbour sends it for your tears. You unfold it and find the fabric stiff, the stitches stark. When you hold it to your face, the cloth scratches your skin. Even comfort has edges here. The days pass in monotony. Wake, dress in black, receive condolences, write notes, visit the grave. Each ritual is endless repetition. You begin to forget how it felt to wake and choose colours, to laugh without glancing around, to speak without calculation. Time does not move forward. It circles. The stopped clocks on the mantel seem truthful after all. Historians still disagree whether deep mourning was embraced sincerely or endured reluctantly. Some accounts glow with pride, widows writing that they found solace in strict ritual. Others confess suffocation, calling the year and a day a prison sentence. Perhaps both are true. You feel both at once, safety in structure, despair in its weight. At night, when Anna removes the veil, your face is damp, your eyes raw. She sets the garment aside and whispers, "You breathe easier now, miss." You nod, though your chest still aches. In the quiet, you imagine what it will be like after 12 months, and one day freedom to lift the veil, to see colour again. The thought is both relief and fear. Who will you be then, without the uniform of sorrow? You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling. Outside, the city continues. Carriage wheels rattle, a dog barks, laughter drifts faintly from a distant tavern. Inside, silence reigns, absolute. The rules of deep mourning have transformed the house into a tomb you walk within. You close your eyes, and even in dreams the black veil hovers, pressing against your lips, whispering the same command. Not yet, not yet, not yet. Months pass, and at last the strict edges of mourning soften. The calendar has carried you through the hardest stretch, the year and a day that defined deep mourning. Now the rules ease slightly, though they never disappear. This stage is called half mourning. You are still bound by etiquette, but the fabric of sorrow is no longer only black. The first morning of change feels strange. Anna lays out a new gown for you, its surface not coal dark but shaded in grey. Another dress follows days later, trimmed faintly in white. And most startling of all, a swatch of pale lavender, so subdued that to modern eyes it seems colourless, but to yours it blazes like rebellion. You touch it cautiously, fingertips grazing the fabric as though it might burn. To wear anything other than black feels like breaking faith, yet etiquette insists this is correct. Half mourning is as codified as deep mourning. The colours permitted are grey, mauve, lilac and white, and nothing more. When you step into the street in lavender for the first time, neighbours notice at once. You hear a murmur. Her mourning has entered the second stage. Their eyes flick up and down, judging whether the shade is too bold, too soon. Even in this loosening scrutiny sharpens. You realise that grief is not allowed to fade silently. It must transform publicly, each stage visible to all. Historians record that shops capitalised on these transitions. Mourning warehouses stocked entire lines of fabrics labelled by stage: deep mourning black, second mourning grey, half mourning lavender. Catalogues listed the correct ribbons, gloves and bonnets for each phase. To break the sequence was scandalous, as shocking as laughter at a graveside. One letter describes a woman shunned for wearing pale pink before her time, her invitations quietly withdrawn. Your body feels the change before your mind accepts it. Grey fabric is lighter, easier to move in. The veil shortens slightly, no longer sweeping the ground but falling only to the chest. You breathe more freely. At church, hymn books are easier to read without gauze across your eyes, and yet the relief carries guilt. Each step without the heavy veil feels like betrayal. You imagine whispers, "She grieves less now. She forgets too soon." Even meals seem altered. Your mother, still clad in black, frowns at the lavender trim of your sleeve. She continues to eat plain broths. But Anna dares bring you a dish with spice, a reminder that flavour exists. You chew slowly, almost furtively, as though taste itself were improper. Yet the warmth on your tongue stirs something long dormant. A curious ritual emerges at this stage. Jewellery once forbidden becomes permitted again, provided it follows the colour rules. Jet is still allowed, but now pearls and amethysts appear, chosen for their subdued tones. A cousin sends you a small brooch, pale amethyst, surrounded by seed pearls. When you fasten it to your gown, it glimmers faintly, a quiet defiance against the sea of black. Neighbours notice, and comments come quickly. She enters half mourning, they whisper approvingly, though approval always carries undertones of surveillance. Some practices seem almost theatrical. In one account, households replaced black-edged stationery with grey-edged paper during half-mourning. Another letter describes curtains swapped for lighter shades, though still dull. Even flowers were chosen carefully. Violets and lilies permitted, roses too frivolous. You find yourself studying the bouquet Anna places in the parlour, its purple blossoms both sombre and daring. Not everyone agreed on the necessity of half-mourning. Some saw it as a mercy, a gradual return to life. Others mocked it as excess, another excuse for merchants to profit from grief. Records contradict each other. Yet here you are, wearing lavender against your skin, unable to deny both the relief and the discomfort it brings. The first time you smile in months occurs without warning. You are writing letters in the parlour, grey-edged paper spread before you, when Anna slips and nearly drops the ink bottle. Her startled face, wide-eyed and absurd, pulls laughter from your chest. It bursts out before you can stop it. For a moment, the room feels alive again. Then silence crashes back. You press your lips together, horrified. Your mother's eyes fix on you sharply. She says nothing, but her glance is enough. The moment shrivels. Still, the memory of laughter lingers, warm as a forbidden fruit. Evenings stretch longer now, the weight of silence easing only slightly. You open a hymn book once, tracing the notes with your finger. The urge to sing is strong, but the memory of prohibition stops you. Instead, you hum under your breath, so softly you can barely hear it yourself. The sound feels dangerous, yet also necessary, like breathing after being underwater too long. Historians remark on how half-mourning blurred boundaries. Some women embraced it eagerly, welcoming colour and sound. Others clung stubbornly to black, unwilling to surrender the dignity of deep mourning. Letters hint at arguments within families, daughters eager to move forward, mothers insisting on more months of black. Your house reflects this tension. Your mother's frown against your lavender sleeves, your own guilt at relief. Quirky customs surface even here. In certain towns, widows in half-mourning were discouraged from attending balls, but allowed to visit close friends. Some records suggest special mourning teas were held, gatherings where only the bereaved were invited, their clothing coordinated in sombre hues. You imagine such a room, grey and lilac dresses clustered together, voices low, as though sorrow itself had been colour-coded. At night, you remove the lavender gown and fold it carefully. The colour still startles you, even in dim candlelight. It looks almost cheerful, though dulled by etiquette. You touch the fabric and feel the strangeness of transition, no longer the prisoner of black, not yet free. You wonder if grief can truly be mapped onto shades of cloth, if sorrow obeys the spectrum merchants have drawn. When you lie down, you dream of colours, not vivid, not bright, but muted tones, soft grey skies, pale violet flowers, white ribbons fluttering in wind. They swirl together, forming patterns like veils. You wake with the impression that mourning has seeped into your very vision, tinting even dreams. And so half mourning stretches on, a compromise between past and future. You carry sorrow still, pinned at your throat in jewellery, stitched into your sleeves in colour. Yet life presses forward, step by step, hue by hue. Tomorrow you will wake, choose between grey or lavender, and once again walk the fine line between devotion and release. Your own mourning stretches on, but you begin to notice something unsettling. The rules do not weigh equally on everyone. In your household, the women remain bound by fabric, colour and silence. Yet the men, your brother, your uncles, even acquaintances who visit, observe mourning in ways so brief, so simple, that you feel as if they are stepping lightly across a bridge, while you wade waist-deep through a river of rules. Your brother arrives one morning wearing the same dark suit he wore to the funeral. His hat is trimmed with a narrow band of black crepe tied around the crown. His gloves are plain leather, with no embroidery or hairwork. He looks sombre, but not shackled. He joins you at breakfast, where your grey-edged stationery and lavender-trimmed gown mark you still as prisoner of grief. He eats heartily, speaking in a steady voice. "I must return to the office today," he says. Work waits. You pause, teacup trembling in your hand. For women, mourning removes them from society. For men, it interrupts little. In the street, men's mourning is recognised, but not scrutinised. A black armband, a ribbon on a hat, a dark suit, these suffice. They wear them for weeks, perhaps months, but rarely the full year and a day. And when they shed the band, society shrugs. No whispers of disrespect, no condemnation. You wonder if anyone will accuse your brother of forgetting too soon. Likely not. Yet if you were to shed your veil tomorrow, you would be condemned at once. Historians remark on this double standard often. Manuals of mourning printed exact prescriptions for widows 12 months, and 1 day in deep mourning, 6 months in half mourning, with every detail codified. For widowers, the rules were lighter. 3 months of subdued dress was considered sufficient. Letters from the time reveal women's resentment. "He returns to dinners before I may even leave the house," one widow wrote bitterly. Another confessed envy that her brother attended the theatre within weeks, while she still counted days in black crepe. Not everyone agreed on the fairness, but fairness was not the measure. Propriety was. The inequality becomes sharper as you watch your uncle. He comes to call, his black gloves neatly tucked into his hat, his cravat a shade darker than usual. He speaks warmly, even laughing at a neighbour's remark. No one chastises him. No one calls him unfeeling. The sound of his laughter does not bring frowns. You, by contrast, still muzzle even a smile. At church, the division is glaring. Women sit clustered in veils, black fabric rustling, eyes hidden. Men appear in sober suits, their faces bare, their eyes uncovered. They sing hymns loudly, while women's voices remain muffled behind gauze. You feel the imbalance not only as injustice but as loneliness. You grieve, but you also play a role. They grieve, but they are allowed to live. Anna whispers to you one evening as she helps unfasten your brooch. "My father wore his black band for only 6 weeks when my mother passed." People said nothing. Her eyes flicker with quiet anger. Yet if my mother had been the one left behind, she trails off, but you understand. Even small details emphasize the gulf. Men's mourning attire was often sewn into existing wardrobes, ribbons, armbands, dark ties, while women required entire new wardrobes. The expense was crushing. Mourning warehouses thrived because women could not escape the rules. Some historians suggest this was as much economics as propriety. A society profited by trapping women in cycles of grief made visible. Records contradict one another on intent, but the outcome was clear. One afternoon, as you return from the graveyard, you overhear 2 men outside a tobacconist's. They nod toward you. "Her mourning is correct," one says. "A pity for her, poor thing." The other shrugs. "My wife wore black for 6 months. That was enough." Their words sting, not only for the casualness, but for the reminder that your body, your face, your life is measured while theirs is excused. The unfairness gnaws at you most when invitations begin to arrive again for the men. Your brother receives a card for a dinner. Your uncle attends a lecture. You, by contrast, remain confined. Your mourning clothes announce your absence before you even decline. To appear would be scandalous. To stay away is mandatory. Historians debate whether women ever found freedom in these strict codes. Some argue that mourning gave them space from social obligations, a pause in which expectations of hospitality and appearance fell silent. Others insist it was a prison, silencing them while men resumed life unburdened. Letters suggest both truths. One woman relished the solitude, another described it as a cage with velvet bars. You feel the bars keenly, no matter how soft. In the household, the imbalance seeps into daily rhythm. Your brother reads the newspaper aloud, commenting on politics. You sit silent, embroidery in hand, though even bright thread is forbidden. You sew with black or grey, stitches neat but lifeless. He discusses trade, travel, the bustling city. You remain tethered to veils, biscuits, letters. The contrast is constant, unspoken but loud. Even servants sense it. The coachman wears a black band for a time, but by spring he discards it without comment. Anna continues to wear dark dresses, not by etiquette but by command of the household. Yet even she can laugh in the kitchen where no one hears. You cannot. At night, the double standard presses hardest. You remove layers of black cloth, fold them neatly, and lie down in silence. Your brother sits downstairs still, reading by lamplight, untroubled. His grief is his own, not bound in cloth or colour. Yours is visible, codified, eternal. When you dream, you see two figures standing side by side at a graveside. One is draped in black crape, head bowed beneath a veil. The other wears a dark band on his arm, face uncovered, voice free. Both stand in the same damp soil, yet one is trapped, the other unbound. You wake with the sense that even in death society has divided you, not only by class but by gender, dictating who may grieve and who must grieve publicly. The next morning, as Anna fastens your veil again, you whisper, "Will it ever end?" She hesitates, hands pausing on the ribbon. "For men quickly," she says softly. "For us never soon enough." Her answer hangs heavy, more truthful than any etiquette manual. And as you step once more into the street, your veil swaying, you feel not only sorrow for the dead but resentment for the living rules that bind you still. The weeks slip into one another until the days lose their edges. You have almost learned to move in the uniform of grief without thinking, until one morning Anna brings not cloth but a photograph. She sets it carefully on the table beside your tea, her face composed though her eyes betray unease. The picture is stiff and formal, printed on a heavy card. At first you think it is a family portrait, a mother seated, children gathered close, the father standing tall behind them. But then your gaze catches on the father's eyes, glassy, unfocused, too still. His hand rests on the chair, but its angle is wrong, fingers waxen. A shadow reveals the stand that props his body upright. You understand in an instant. This is not a portrait of life. It is a portrait of death. Victorians called them memento mori. Families would pose the deceased as though alive, arranging bodies in chairs or standing with support, eyes sometimes painted open after the plate was taken. For many, this was the only photograph ever made of the person. Cameras were expensive, and so death became the one chance to capture an image for memory. The custom shocks your modern sensibility, but here it is commonplace. Anna whispers. "They sent it from York. His family wished us to have it." You turn the card in your hands. The children in the picture stare solemnly, their small hands resting on the still father's sleeve. They seem accustomed to the practice, unstartled by the lifeless figure posed among them. You shiver, despite the fire burning in the grate. To hold such an image is to feel both closeness and distance, intimacy and unease. Yet society embraces these tokens. Albums fill with photographs of the living and the dead together, no difference marked. Some are labelled carefully, taken the day after passing, others left unmarked, leaving future generations to guess which faces were alive, which already gone. Historians debate how often post-mortem photography occurred. Surviving images suggest it was widespread, yet records contradict. Some ministers condemned it as morbid, calling it a mockery of dignity. Others praised it as a comfort, a last portrait to cherish. Letters hint at the variety, one widow treasuring her husband's likeness, another refusing to display it in her parlour. Not everyone agreed, yet the custom persisted strongly enough to leave thousands of photographs behind. Later that day, your mother requests her own appointment with a photographer. The undertaker has recommended one who specialises in mourning portraits. "We must have a likeness," she says firmly. "It is expected." You protest softly, but she shakes her head. "Without it, people will speak. They will say we neglected him." And so arrangements are made. When the photographer arrives, his equipment fills the parlour: the wooden camera, the tall tripod, the iron stand for supporting bodies. You notice his black coat stained with chemicals, his fingers yellowed from silver nitrate. He moves with precision, practiced in the ritual. "Where will you stand?" he asks. Already directing, you and your mother are placed in chairs, your veils arranged to fall gracefully, your hands folded. The background is plain, a length of dark cloth. You sit still, breath shallow. The photographer counts softly. Hold, hold, while the lens captures its long exposure. The silence is thick, broken only by the faint hiss of the lamp. When it ends, you exhale, hands trembling in your lap. The photographer bows slightly. "The likeness will be ready soon," he says, already packing his chemicals. You wonder if the photograph will capture your sorrow, or only the costume of it. After he departs, Anna clears the parlour. You notice her fingers lingering on the chair where the photograph was taken, as though she fears some echo lingers. She crosses herself quickly before leaving the room. That evening, you leaf through a book your cousin left behind, an album filled with carte de visite, small portraits mounted on card. Among them, 3 are clearly post-mortem. One shows a baby sleeping in its mother's arms, though the mother's gaze is distant, her grief barely hidden. Another depicts 2 sisters posed stiffly beside a boy whose head tilts unnaturally. The third is more subtle, an elderly man seated, eyes faintly retouched to seem alive. Without the caption, you would not have known. The strangeness unsettles you, but also fascinates. The Victorians lived so closely with death that they draw it into the heart of family memory. You wonder if future generations will open albums and fail to distinguish the living from the dead, their images mingling, all faces equally silent. At supper, your mother discusses where to display the portrait once it arrives. The parlour, she decides, above the mantel. You swallow uneasily, imagining visitors sitting beneath his likeness, his still eyes watching. But etiquette insists photographs be shown, proof that the family observed proper remembrance. To hide it would be disrespect. The following week, the print arrives. The image is dark, shadows heavy, yet his features are clear. Your veil obscures half your face. Your mother's posture is rigid. The photograph looks less like a family and more like a tableau of grief. Still, when neighbours visit, they nod approvingly. "A fine likeness," one says. Another remarks, "Properly done." Their voices carry the same tone as when they praised the brooch, the biscuits, the veil. You realise the photograph is not for you at all. It is for them, for the visitors, the neighbours, the community that polices sorrow. It is another token, another performance, another object to display like a stage prop. Historians note that post-mortem photography eventually waned as cameras became cheaper. Families could capture the living long before death, reducing the need for such rituals. Yet in this moment, for you, the practice feels unavoidable. You pin the photograph to the wall, and every time you pass the parlour you feel his eyes on you. open, retouched, but sightless. At night, you dream of photographs. You see yourself standing stiffly, veil brushing your lips, while the camera captures not only your likeness but your very breath. When you wake, you half expect to find your own image printed and displayed, proof that you too have become part of the endless gallery of mourning. You lie in bed, the candle guttering low, and wonder if grief itself has turned you into a portrait, posed, frozen, preserved for others to judge. The house is silent, the clock's still stopped, the mirror's still veiled, and somewhere in the parlour the photograph waits, a permanent reminder that in this world even death is staged, even sorrow is framed. By the time the photograph settles above the mantel, the reality of mourning as a commercial enterprise becomes impossible to ignore. At first you thought grief belonged only to your heart, to your body in its veil, but each day brings another delivery, another parcel marked with black edges, another bill slipped discreetly onto a tray. Mourning is not only a ritual, it is an industry, and your house has become its best customer. One morning, a messenger arrives from Regent Street. He carries boxes wrapped in dark paper, sealed with twine. Anna cuts the string, and inside lie lengths of crepe, neatly folded, each dyed to regulation shade. The fabric smells harsh, chemical and sharp against your nose. For replacement, the note says simply, "The undertaker arranged the order weeks ago. Mourning warehouses keep ledgers of deaths and anticipate the family's needs before you even write." You unfold the cloth and let it slide across your lap. It scratches faintly, leaving fibres clinging to your gloves. You think of the women in the factories where it is woven, their lungs filling daily with dust, their hands raw from dye. Letters from the period tell of illness, of crepe cough, of women sickened by the very fabric meant to display grief. Some accounts say it killed more than it comforted, yet still it sells, yard upon yard, feeding a market built on sorrow. In the afternoon, your mother takes you to a shop that sells nothing but mourning goods. Its windows are dimmed with curtains, displaying mannequins draped in black, their heads bowed. Inside, the air smells of dust and perfume mingled, as though even fragrance has been subdued. Racks of dresses line the walls, black, grey, lavender, each tagged with labels for deep mourning, second mourning, half mourning, gloves, veils, shawls, even fans trimmed in crepe. Behind the counter, glass cases hold jewellery, jet brooches, hairwork rings, bracelets woven of dark strands. Customers move quietly through the aisles, voices hushed. A woman beside you fingers a pair of gloves, whispering, 6 months will suffice. Another consults a clerk about stationery, black edges, but not too wide. We are not in deepest mourning anymore. The clerk nods gravely, as if grief itself can be measured in millimetres of ink. Historians describe these warehouses with fascination. Entire businesses thrived on bereavement, some expanding into catalogues delivered across the empire. Families ordered mourning attire by post, selecting fabrics and jewellery the way others might choose wallpaper. Some accounts condemn it as exploitation, others insist it offered comfort, structure and guidance. Not everyone agreed, but the fact remains grief was a commodity, traded openly, priced per yard. You and your mother leave with parcels stacked high, a veil trimmed with lace, a new bonnet edged in grey, a box of mourning envelopes. The shopkeeper bows as you depart, eyes glinting with profit masked as sympathy. The carriage lurches home, wheels rattling. You clutch the packages on your lap, feeling less like tokens of devotion than receipts of obligation. At home, Anna unpacks the boxes. She smooths each gown, lays each envelope neatly. "It is like a festival," she mutters once, then flushes. "Forgive me, miss. I mean only so many things." Her words sting with truth. Mourning has replaced festivity with its own economy, its own spectacle. That evening, a visitor calls. She admires the photograph on the mantel, the brooch at your throat, the crepe on the curtains. "So proper," she says, nodding approvingly. Then she glances at the new bonnet and adds, From Barlow's, yes, they are the finest. You realise she recognises the vendor at a glance. As though mourning has brands like fashion, approval rests not only on sincerity, but on source. The next day, more parcels arrive. Black-edged notepaper, sealing wax in dark sticks, even matches in boxes printed with urns. You stare at them in disbelief. Is every object in life to be transformed into emblem of loss? Yet etiquette demands it. To send a letter on plain paper would be scandalous. To seal it with bright wax would be indecent. So even the act of correspondence becomes a purchase, a proof of fidelity paid in coin. Anna remarks that the servants too feel the weight. They must wear black bands or plain dark dresses, provided at the family's expense. The coachman complains softly of heat beneath his armband. The scullery maid sighs that she owns nothing but grey now. Even they are conscripted into the industry, their bodies enrolled in the display of grief. At supper, your mother recites a list of expenses: fabric, jewellery, stationery, fees for the undertaker, payment for professional mourners. The sums mount high, higher than some families could ever afford. You think of letters you've read describing paupers buried without crape, families shamed for lack of display. One account mentions burial clubs, where poor labourers paid small sums weekly to ensure proper funerals. Without it, they risked disgrace, their families branded negligent. In death, even the poor must buy respect. Historians still debate whether this industry was a burden or a comfort. Some widows confessed gratitude for shops that provided guidance when their minds were clouded. Others wrote angrily of being trapped. Their grief measured by purchases they could ill afford. Records contradict each other, but the ledger books of warehouses show steady profits, line after line of sorrow translated into pounds and shillings. At night, when the house is quiet, you pass through the parlour and glance at the photograph again. His eyes, painted open, seem to glimmer faintly in lamplight. Beneath it sit the parcels from the day's shopping, stacked like offerings at an altar. Grief has become a marketplace, and your home is its stall. You dream of shops lined not with dresses or jewellery, but with veils that breathe on their own, reaching out with tendrils to cover your face. You see coins pressed into the cloth until it stiffens, and hear whispers counting your devotion by the pound. You wake with a start, the echo of the tally still in your ears. When morning comes, Anna ties the new bonnet beneath your chin, smoothing the crape with careful fingers. You glance in the mirror, still covered by its cloth, and realise you do not need to see yourself. Others will see enough. The veil, the brooch, the stationery, the biscuits. They will note every item, every purchase, every propriety. Grief has become your uniform, and the market ensures you will never lack for supply. The days fold one into another, the weight of mourning measured less by grief and more by the ticking, or rather the absence of clocks. Months have passed since the funeral, yet every room still carries the residue of ritual. The air feels stale, as if the house itself has been sealed shut. Even when you open a window slightly, the smell of coal smoke and damp stone mingles with the lilies that have long since rotted in their vases. You often think of time. In deep mourning it crawled, each hour dragging, pinned in place by the veil that smothered your breath. In half mourning, time feels deceptive. Lighter fabrics and muted colours have crept into your wardrobe, lavender, grey, lilac, but the change is cosmetic, not emotional. You wonder if grief itself can be stitched into calendars, 12 months and a day for black, 6 for grey, another 6 for lavender. When the sequence ends, will sorrow end too, or will it linger, invisible beneath the pale sleeves? Every evening you sit with your mother, embroidering cautiously with dull threads, writing thank you notes on grey-edged paper. Conversation has dwindled to fragments. Did you receive Mrs. Harlowe's card? Yes, it arrived this morning. The words are rote, their meaning lost. You feel as though mourning has become not an emotion but a script you recite without conviction. Still, society insists. At church, eyes flick to your dress, noting its shade, proper. Someone whispers behind you. You want to ask what proper means. Does it mean you loved enough, that you waited the right length of time, that your sorrow has been choreographed correctly, but you remain silent, lips tight behind your prayer book? Historians note this stage often, how half mourning became as regulated as the first. Some families introduced lilac too early, prompting gossip. Others remained in black longer than required, drawing respect tinged with pity. Letters contradict one another. One widow confessed relief when grey appeared. Another wrote that she felt stripped naked without black. Perhaps mourning was always both shield and shackle. The passing weeks bring new rituals. Each visit to the graveyard becomes quieter, fewer neighbours attending. The mound has settled now. Grass sprouting over the soil. A stone marker has been placed, its carved name weathering already in rain. You kneel before it, gloves damp against the cold marble. Around you, other graves gleam with new stones, each one a ledger of devotion and expenditure. Some soar tall, angels pointing heavenward, others squat modestly, plain slabs. You know each stone speaks as loudly as any mourner. Here is love measured in pounds. You think of a letter you once read, describing a poor man buried without a marker. His family wept, but neighbours whispered they must not have loved him enough. The cruelty of the thought lingers. In this society, grief is always on display, always for others' judgment. Even the ground itself becomes part of the theatre. The house remains unchanged. The clocks are still silent. The mirrors are still veiled. At first you thought these would be uncovered once mourning lessened, but your mother insists, not until the final stage. So you pass the shrouded glass daily, wondering if you still look like yourself beneath the cloth. You have not seen your face clearly in months. When Anna brushes your hair, you study her reflection in the covered mirror, the faint outline of her form. You wonder if she too feels erased. Strange customs continue to filter into your life. A neighbour sends a parcel, a fan trimmed with grey crepe, appropriate for half mourning. You unfold it, the ribs clicking softly. The fabric whispers against your cheek as you wave it. Once, fans were instruments of flirtation, flicked and snapped to send secret messages in drawing rooms. Now, yours is only another symbol of sorrow, muted and proper. You set it aside. Another visitor brings biscuits again, though these are plainer, without black sugar. She explains softly. In half mourning, sweets may return, but modestly. You bite one. The flavour is simple, a hint of spice, almost pleasant, yet guilt twists in your chest. Can food taste good while you still wear grey? The rules seem endless, their lines invisible, but cutting. At night, you try to write in your journal. Your words stumble. I do not know if I am still grieving, or if I am only obeying. The ink bleeds slightly on the grey-edged paper. You close the book quickly, ashamed of the thought. To question mourning is to question love itself, and society does not forgive that. Historians disagree on whether people truly believed in these customs or merely performed them. Some insist that rituals gave order to chaos, helping families cope. Others argue they became hollow, an endless chain of performance. You feel the tension in your own body, grief both numbed and sharpened by repetition. The veil may be shorter now, but the weight has not lifted. One evening, your brother returns from a dinner. He sets his hat on the table, the black band long since removed. He speaks cheerfully of music, of speeches, of laughter. His eyes widen slightly when he sees you still in grey. You must be weary of it, he says lightly. You nod, but do not answer. You cannot explain that the weight of judgment keeps you clothed in sorrow even when you long for release. When you lie down, the silence is thick. The stopped clock looms, hands frozen still. You wonder if time will ever move again, if mirrors will ever uncover their faces. You imagine lifting the veil, seeing colour, hearing music. But for now, mourning stretches on, one day after another, time measured not in love but in fabric, colour, and silence. The seasons shift, though, within your house. Time still feels stalled. Outside, children chase kites in the first winds of spring, their laughter carrying across the street. Inside, your own laughter remains locked behind your teeth. You glance at the calendar on your desk, 12 months, and one day have passed since the funeral. Deep mourning has long since given way to half mourning, and even that is now, by etiquette's measure, complete. The veil may be folded away, the clocks may tick again, the mirrors may be uncovered. Anna tells you softly, "It is permitted now, miss." She lifts the black cloth from the tall hall mirror, folding it with care. For the first time in more than a year, you see your own reflection. The face is familiar yet altered, paler, eyes shadowed, lips pressed tight from habit. The sight unsettles you more than the shrouded glass ever did. You trace your features with your gaze, wondering when you became a stranger to yourself. That evening, the mantel photograph still watches. His image remains frozen, painted eyes open, yet the rules that bound you to it have loosened. You could take it down now, move it to a less central place. But your mother insists it stay. People expect it, she says. So it lingers, the gaze of the dead still presiding over the living. Your gown today is neither black nor grey, but soft lilac, trimmed faintly with white. Etiquette allows this final stage, the fading veil of mourning. You step into the street cautiously. Neighbours nod approvingly, noting the transition. No whispers of impropriety now. Instead, the murmurs shift. How bravely she bore it. You hear the judgment beneath the praise. They do not know your thoughts in the silent nights, only the colours of your sleeves. Historians remark that mourning rules stretched so long that grief often outlasted sorrow. Some widows confessed they had little sadness left, but continued the ritual out of fear of censure. Others found that by the time mourning ended, they no longer knew how to live outside its strictures. Records contradict one another. One letter celebrating freedom, another dreading it. You feel both truths pulling at you. The first evening without a veil feels naked. At supper, the lamplight touches your face without filter, every line visible. You sip tea, aware of your lips moving freely, no gauze brushing your breath, yet relief is shadowed by fear. You imagine whispers, she moves on too quickly. Though the rules say otherwise, habit lingers. Gradually, the house loosens. Curtains are drawn back, allowing light to spill across dusty furniture. The piano is opened. You press a key experimentally. The note rings bright, startling in its clarity after months of silence. The sound feels like sunlight. You almost smile, but then pause, glancing at your mother. She nods slightly. It is allowed now. You breathe deeply as if a door has cracked open. Still, sorrow leaves traces. You catch yourself pausing before mirrors, expecting the cloth. You startle at the sound of clocks ticking, their rhythm almost intrusive after silence. The jewellery of hair remains in your drawer, too intimate to discard, too strange to wear daily. You finger the brooch once, the plait beneath glass, glinting faintly. Some widows wore such tokens for life, never discarding them. You wonder if you will too. Society begins to draw you back. Invitations return, teas, dinners, church socials. You accept cautiously. At the first gathering, women greet you warmly, eyes darting to your lilac sleeves, measuring the propriety of your colour. Men bow politely, murmuring, "So glad to see you out again." You nod, smile faintly, feel the weight of every glance. Even in release, you are still observed. Historians disagree whether mourning rules comforted or crushed. Perhaps both. You have lived them long enough to know that grief became less about your heart and more about fabric, colour, and public approval. Yet within that prison, you found a kind of rhythm, a framework to lean on when the weight of loss might have undone you. Now without it, you feel both lighter and less certain. One night, alone, you sit at the piano again. Fingers move tentatively, pressing chords once forbidden. The sound fills the room, warm, alive. For a moment you remember how it felt before, the ease of laughter, the taste of bread with spice, the comfort of seeing your own face in glass. Then you pause, close the lid gently, not all at once. Life must return slowly, as Mourning taught. In bed you dream of veils folding themselves away, of biscuits crumbling into earth, of clocks starting again, hands sweeping forward. You wake with the first light of dawn, curtains open, mirror bare, the veil has lifted. But its memory lingers like a shadow, faint yet permanent. You rise, dress and step into the day. Colours wait now, muted but present. And the world hums again beyond the silence. Grief has faded into ritual, ritual into memory, yet the weight of it never fully leaves. You carry it in your breath, in your posture, in the faint lilac thread against your sleeve. The mourning veil has been lifted, but a softer veil remains forever, woven not of crepe but of memory itself. The long year of mourning drifts behind you now, like a procession fading down a misty street. The veils are folded, the clocks tick once more, and yet the house still carries a softened hush, as though it too remembers. You are safe here, in this quiet, wrapped not in black crepe, but in gentler stillness. Let the images of mourning ease away, the heavy gowns, the long veils, the biscuits that tasted of chalk, all of them loosen their hold and slide into memory. You feel your breath deepen, no longer caught by stiff fabric, but free and steady. Inhale slowly and let it go. The stone in the churchyard no longer feels sharp in your mind. It softens, blurring into the green of grass, the sway of violets, the quiet pattern of seasons returning. What once was rigid ritual becomes distant, a part of history watched from afar. The weight of rules, of eyes measuring your every gesture, fades until it is only a whisper. You are safe now. The house has opened its curtains. The windows let in light. The piano can be played softly again. Not for show, not for society, but for you. Imagine the simple notes drifting gently into the air, each one fading into calm. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw soften. The long rules of Victorian mourning, so strange, so heavy, belong to another world, and that world recedes. You are here now, in stillness. That old silence no longer presses. It comforts. The veil lifts behind you. That time fades. Only the rhythm of your breath remains. Steady and sure. You are safe. You are held. And as the night gathers around you, you let yourself drift, softer, slower, lighter, into rest.